Hey, this is Steve Guttenberg. This guy across from me is Rob Stevens, but I am the audiophiliac. He isn't. But he had a much better job than me because he got to work on the John Lennon Ultimate Collection doing my favorite part, the raw mixes, which is just the, well, you should explain it better than me.
Well, it's what happened in the studio. If you're listening to the 5-1s, you're sitting in the middle of the room with the musicians around you. If you're listening to the stereos, they're in front of you. But in either case, they are unadorned. They do not have the usual, John's vocals don't have the usual slap and reverb that he was so fond of. The instruments don't have slap and reverb. And you get a dynamic, a sense, because there's a little bit of chatter before, a little bit of chatter after, of what things felt like being there in the room. And one of the things that struck me that does not have to do as much with being the mixer, you know, along with, you know, Yoko and I mixed it. And we've been working together for long enough that there are different ways in which we work. To describe each one of them would be, you know, could go on ad nauseum. But one of the things that I picked up by being able to listen to the songs done in what is almost a standard rock arrangement, you know, bass, drums, guitar, keyboards, and in this case 2 guitars, or sometimes 2 keyboards or whatever, but done live, is you got to focus on the song, not just the production.
Right.
And
the song is naked.
And the song is naked, but the song is arranged, and the song does have solos, and the song feels like a 4 or 5 or 6 person band, depending on the song, playing it, as opposed to it's a played record rather than a made record.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a good distinction.
And one of the things that I really got into was how prescient the album was, and how it could have been written yesterday and played today, the way that it is on the raw material. Oh, you know, it could have also been produced the way that they chose to do it back then, which was to give it a little bit of ear candy, so that it sold a bit better than John's first album, which actually I'm crazy about. But the second album's songs are not thematically that different from the first album's. And if you took those songs and superimposed them on what's happening today, I can tell you that Give Me Some Truth, you might as well be singing a song called Fake News.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And if you didn't know, or if you hadn't been, you know, told, it hadn't been drummed into your head that How Do You Sleep was about a spat between 2 musicians in a very, very, very famous band that changed the history of rock and roll,
those guys.
You might think, yeah, right. You might think How Do You Sleep is about any one of the number of nefarious characters running around running the show right now.
Right.
And it wouldn't be a big jump. If you listen to I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, you know, we were talking before we recorded this segment about, you know, things like Vietnam. Right now there must be 20 Vietnams all over the world, and it's almost overload. Your head would explode if you had to think about it. It's So Hard is about dealing with the difficulties of just getting through day-to-day life, to me, when I hear it. When John says, sometimes I, you know, either feel like or think I'm going down, or feel like going down, which I take in a very dark way, because he was the one who sang, if I'm lonely, want to die. So I felt like there was a precedent for an interpretation like that. And you start with Imagine, which is the ultimate in, gee, I wish things could be this way. Which, for me, after I wake up, realize what havoc is going on, you have to drift into that place of almost naive realism, naive idealism.
Yeah.
Excuse me. in order to just stay sane and get out of bed. And then you go to Crippled Inside, which is, it can be an internal psychological malady, or it can be how picking up the paper makes you feel in the morning. Yeah. You know, I don't watch the news anymore. I mean, I still get everything, but I don't sit there for 3 hours and watch different commentators talking on CNN. It'll cripple you. And then you got the love songs, which are eternal in nature. You know, Jealous Guy is, I don't know that Jealousy in '71 is any different from Jealousy in 2018, except for perhaps the way one might react to it. And the means and methods one might have in 2018 that one might not have had in 1971. And Oh Yoko is just unbridled affection, you know, love, you know, deep love, and it makes you realize what's possible, and it also makes you realize what she lost.
But you know, it's funny.
Yeah.
We've all lived with this music for forever, but you've lived with it from the inside. You know, you've seen it up closer than normal human beings, like everybody else, that is. Right?
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess I had to be hit over the head by that to be able to describe, you know, to whatever degree I'm describing it, how current the record actually is. And I understand and respect that it's a piece of history, and I respect all of the things that were done around it that bring out the piece of history. And what I also respect is how what's brought out is that it is as current as it is while being 47 years old, something like that, give or take. And you hear John's vocals unadorned, and you hear, you know, I mean, when Yoko was here, we knew the vocal was right when you almost heard the spittle coming out of John's mouth. And I've spoken before about the deep breath before Imagine. It's something timeless is about to happen. And I think that's that. And just briefly, the way that Sam Gannon went through the record also made one aware of a timelessness about it and the evolution of it and Yoko's role in it. Because if you think about how on Imagine, she talks about a piano, same thing played in octaves. So you got John and Nicky playing in octaves, and it sounds gorgeous. It could have been done that way. And so you learn about that partnership that was, for a whole bunch of reasons, not brought to a lot of people's attention. And you listen to the work that Paul did, which is taking, you know, his and Yoko's notion and his, you know, incredible skills as a soundscaper, and taking the record to where it could have gone if they had that gear available at the time. Because as a lot of people may be aware, they would record with some compression, record with some EQ, so that they could use those units again on mixdown. Because they didn't have 18 of everything. They didn't have plugins. And so there was stuff that I learned from what I did that had a lot to do with content and a lot to do with the forward thinkingness of things. And things I learned from Sam that had to do with that also. And John and Yoko's interpersonal relationship, which I thought I knew a lot about, but this took it to a whole nother level. And Paul's, which took the original record and made the colors even more vivid.
It's beautiful.
That's my take.
All right. Well, thanks. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.